So on this one here, we need to go ahead and find that common denominator before we can add the fractions together. To do that, you got to factor the bottom. Well, our 6b factors into a 2 times 3 times b. Well, our 14a squared b squared is a 2 times 4. Oh, sorry, 2 times 7. Sometimes you make dumb mistakes. And you still have that a squared and b squared. So now you find that least common denominator. So you write down all the different things that show up are 2, 3, and 7. Still with that a and the b. And remember, if you have a choice in exponents, which we do on the b's, you're going to choose a higher one. So we choose a b squared versus a b to the first. So now we're going to take this first fraction. We got to decide, what do we have to multiply that first fraction by so we have this common denominator up here? Well, we need a 7, we need an a squared, and we need another b hanging around. So we'll go ahead and multiply by that. Multiply the bottom by that, and we multiply the top by that because it's multiplying by a special form of 1. Taking a look at the next one over here, we need to have a 3 showing up on this one here so that we can have our common denominator. So multiply the bottom by 3, multiply the top by 3. So we do that. We could write this as one fraction over our common denominator. We multiply our 5a times our 7a squared b, and then we get 35a to the fourth b. Then we got to multiply our 3 and 9, and that gives us 27. Now, we want to just simplify the bottom a little bit. Sometimes if you're just dealing with variables, you'd be done. You won't be able to do anything more. But we're going to just write our 2 times 3 times 7 as a 42. Top right problem. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We're going to go ahead and factor the denominators. So we're going to factor the first one. We're going to pull out that greatest common factor. We're going to factor the bottom one. We're going to pull out a 6, but remember 6 is 2 times 3. Our least common denominator, we write down all the different things that show up. We have a 3, a 2, and our parentheses of x minus 5. That's our common denominator. So on this first one, we need a 2 showing up on the bottom, so we multiply the top by 2. The second one, we already have our common denominator, so we don't have to do anything. Then once we have the same denominators, we can write it as one big fraction over that. So then we can take our red 2, distribute it into our parentheses. Take our negative sign, apply it to the whole thing over here. And so when we do that, we just get this on top over that common denominator. We now have a 2x minus a 3x. That goes together. We have a 20 minus a 15. That goes together. Now, you'll notice we have a 5 minus x and an x minus 5. We can cross those out and they become negative 1. So we really have a negative 1 with our 2 and 3 still on the bottom. So we get negative 1/6. This one here, pause the video, try to work it out. So find that common denominator by factoring. We get our LCD being this here. The first fraction, we need to multiply the top one by an x, a y, a 2, and a 3. Second fraction doesn't need anything. Then we can go ahead and write it as one big fraction. Multiply together the top of this first fraction. We have a 3 times a 2 times a 3. And then we'd have an x cubed and a y. Then we'd have a plus, and we'd have the top one here. And in this case, there's nothing we can cross out top and bottom. Remember, you can only cross out if you have the whole top and the whole bottom being multiplied by the same thing. So we cannot simplify the 12 and the 18 because it's not 8 as anything being multiplied by the whole top. Top right one over here. We now have 2 fractions on top. Really, it's 2 fractions in the bottom because it's a 1, and 1 is 1 over 1. So on top, we want to go ahead and write that as one fraction. So to do that, we need to have a common denominator. That's AB here, so don't get stung by this problem because there's AB hanging around. So we multiply the first one, top and bottom, by B. For second fraction, top and bottom, by A. So on top, that's really 1b plus a all over your common denominator of ab. Then we want to do the same thing for the bottom. Our common denominator down here on the bottom is just b. We already have that in the very beginning. This one here, we need to multiply top and bottom by b. So then we get the same denominator on the bottom. We get 1 on the top minus 1 times b, or 1 minus b over b. We now have a fraction divided by a fraction. Instead of dividing by a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to take the second fraction, multiply it by its reciprocal. We now can go ahead and simplify this. You'll notice we have a b times the whole top. We also have this b times the whole bottom. Those b's would drop out. So then we're only left with a plus b in the top. And then we're left with this a here times our 1 minus b here.